come in here and weld, and they really seem to have a pretty good interest in welding. I guess it's exciting using high voltage to melt metal together. I would say the girls are better at welding than the boys typically. I guess they're more artsy. Hello, Mitchell. Yeah. I'm not even the greatest welder, to be honest with you. I just, this demonstration here at the Oklahoma Homesteader Rendezvous is simply a farm welder's demonstration. I'd say I'm just barely better than average. That's what I would say. I get by really well. I get by. That's exactly what I do. I can tell you this though, with welding, patience is a virtue. If I really want to take my time, I can make things look really, really good. But when I'm just building a little livestock gate, it's not, it's not going in to be graded. As long as those joints hold for 20 years, it's done its job. I am just building a yeah, I'm not really personally a big fan of him, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. What am I building? I am building a livestock gate, or it's actually going to be an entryway gate to a property I'm building fence at right now, but it's got to be able to hold goat and sheep. So it's going to have a 4x4 panel, which just briefly, I'm going to finish welding these vertical tubings in here, and then I'll be ready to bring the panel in and start tacking it in. I really got to be careful when I start tacking the panel in, because it'll want to warp the gate, because it's lighter gauge tubing. Yeah, I don't have too much of a problem keeping goats in. You know what my biggest problem is when my livestock guardian dogs decide they need to dig under something, and then baby goats, they'll go under stuff like that. My big goats, I don't typically have a problem with them going underneath things. The bigger the goats I have, the less trouble I have. Those pygmies and Nigerians and stuff's when I have the most trouble. more continuous you weld on this thinner tube, the more warp you're going to have. But I'm picking up a warp this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld the panel on this side, and as you weld that panel, it'll want to draw back the other way. So, you know, I keep goats behind a hot wire on my place, Mitchell. Part of it is you need a really hot fence with good ground. And then the other part of it is you got to have a pin that'll hold them pretty good. And then you line that pin with hot wire. And then they learn that they can't jump through it because there's a good fence on the other side of it. So when they learn they can't jump through it, they just get conditioned to stay in it. I am at the Oklahoma Homesteader Rendezvous in McAlester, Oklahoma. I'm doing a welding demonstration that is, it's a little slow today, so I'm actually working on a personal project. I've got several younger kids in here to weld. I think 2 adults and like 4 kids have come in and weld today. I actually did this a couple years ago at the big one, the Oklahoma Homesteader Expo in Pryor, and I think in 2 days I had 40-something people come through the booth. Hopefully tomorrow's a little more busy, but also I really didn't have the time to come down here, so in between demonstrating for some people some things, and what they do is they actually get in here and they weld in the booth. You know, I give them the I get them in here and get them running a bead, and if they can run a bead, I'll get 2 pieces of metal and let them try to weld them together. Been a lot of kids. I find the kids aren't afraid to get in there and try. That was a young girl did that, but you know, it's not perfect, but they were very interested in it, which is what was cool. But I find the kids, like I see lots of adults come by and they're like, oh man, I'd like to try it. They're a little embarrassed. No reason to be, but they are. And the kids are like, I don't care. They're ready to jump in there and start welding on something. But yeah, I've been kind of thinking about doing this more often. maybe travel to some bigger shows to do it. I can tell you this, you can tell just how square you got one of those gates whenever you start trying to put a panel in it. Nice to meet you, Steve, and don't worry about it. Now when you're welding a panel into a gate like this, you kind of want to spread out your heat. You don't want to put big 1-inch welds on there, just little 1/4-inch tacks, because you put too much heat, you really bow that material. If you guys double tap that screen, it'll like this video and it can go up in the algorithms. I know it's kind of weird on the verticals trying to figure out where the like button is. Do you ever find that fuel guy? You know what it looks like? This is Gates, but still working. Like the last one? I think it looks a little sharp. Necessarily, have to, but I need, it's like a matter, it's a finesse. You gotta press it, you gotta get it just right. Because you have a responsibility. You know what I mean? When you bring big lumber. You know what I mean? If you were being like, right? You know, I mean, all the time I got my stuff. Now, I do need to put that. I'm going to take the day off easy. And I mean, I may get one more. But I'm going to take my day off. Gotta lose everybody. No, there's still a bunch of people in there. Thank you. Yeah, double tap the screen. What gauge is still, shoot. I don't know, it's thin. I'm gonna say it's 14 gauge, if I had to guess. It's not very thick. 11 gauge would be a lot better for this. But here's a way. So the main reason I started to get a bow in that gate was because this piece right here, this lateral rail right there, it was a little bit short. So whenever there's a little bit of a gap, like an 1/8 of an inch, and it's not snug in there, and you weld it, it draws it to the metal you're welding it to. It causes it to bow a little bit. So if I had made that cut a little better, more accurate, I'd have less bow. But when it's bowed like this, if I weld that panel on the top, it'll straighten it out, it'll retension it. tell you what's really nice about welding this up here is that this place is air conditioned. I can't even afford to run the air conditioner in my house or in my shop. If I want to run the air conditioner in my tiny little shop that's insulated, it costs me $150. Thank you, Greg, for giving me a thumbs up in there. I actually had 18 people in there. Not too bad. Well, I'm gonna pick it up and see if it's still straight. See if my getting it to bow back the other way worked like I thought. Oh yeah. Destroying my boot. Might be a slight bow in it, but can't really tell it. Now, on these lighter gauge gates that I built, there's a benefit. They're lightweight, so less wear on your hinges, but also you got to consider if I were to punch a hole into here and hang a hinge, like an all thread style gate hinge, it'll be welded to a post, but I'll use an all thread style gate hinge. There's going to be some wear on this thinner metal where the weight of the gate's hanging. So what I do is I weld a 3/4 inch washer, because that's the size of the threaded hinge up through there. I'll put a 3/4 inch washer right here, weld it in, and drill a hole through there. And between that washer and this, it'll never crack right there where the hinge hangs. It's a balance, in my opinion. I mean, sure, if you want to go overkill, you can hang an 8-inch pipe with a post with 11 gauge square tubing gate. But I know this doesn't look real thick because it's not. But if you've ever picked up like a tartar gate, a pre-fert gate, stuff like that, most of them, 9 times out of 10, are super cheaply made, and that metal's even thinner than this because I've tried to weld it. It don't weld up very good. So I like a light gate that I can handle, easy to hang, not hard on the hinges, but I like a gate that's going to last. And that right there, you don't even have to paint it, and it's going to last 5 times as long as a tartar gate, if not longer. Well, guys, that does it for the evening for me. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Thank y'all.